This is somewhat of a follow-up to my last video about political correctness. As I mentioned in that video, political correctness and the call-out culture and our false need to have our opinions validated through censorship and public shaming has been a concern of mine lately. However, as is usually the case with vocal activist movements, we've seen the rise of a knee-jerk reactionary counter-movement. And this movement seems to want to fight for the right to be an asshole. And this is also a problem. Now, don't get me wrong, legally you should have the right to be an asshole, and in most developed countries you do. That's the beauty of free speech and free expression. You have the right to picket funerals. You have the right to body shame. You have the right to make sexist jokes. You have the right to use racial slurs. And since no one has the right not to be offended, if you aren't specifically harassing or harming anyone, you should have the right to do these things. The purpose of the law is not to protect anyone's feelings. But here's the thing. When you do those things, you're being a dick. And you shouldn't be a dick. Legally, it's okay to be a dick. Morally, socially, no. Like, if I give you some food and you ask me, is this safe to eat? It's implied by the very fact that you ask me the question that you expect me to tell the truth when I answer you. And this is a rational expectation. And as an also rational person, I should know this and understand this as well. Because if you assume that I was gonna lie, or even if you thought there was a 50-50 chance that I would lie, you probably wouldn't bother asking in the first place. So when I decide to answer your question, we are entering into an implied moral contract. We both know the terms of the contract. We both know what's expected. So if I tell a lie in response to that question, I've broken the contract. I'm being a dick. And I don't want to get too philosophical about this. The idea of what is and isn't right to do can be very complicated. But I feel like some things should be pretty clear-cut due to the implied empathetical social contract that we all have with one another. Making someone feel like shit, not a good thing to do. Pissing people off for no reason, not a good thing to do. And I feel like we probably all know that those aren't good things to do. But there seems to be this reactionary movement growing in response to things like feminism and social justice activism and even PC culture that wants to make the argument, no, it's okay to be a bigot. No, it's okay to be an asshole. But it's not. In my last discussion, I used Nicole Auber's Dear Fat People video as an example of PC culture using outrage and censorship to falsely validate their own personal opinion. And I do think that's part of what happened, but does that make it okay to make fat people feel like shit? Of course not. Side note, as I said before, comedians have no obligation to be nice to you as part of their act. My argument is that Nicole Auber's thesis is morally abhorrent. Side note, there are sites like Return of Kings, one of many communities that operates mostly as a knee-jerk reaction to feminism, and one that I'm pretty sure is at least half trolling. Poe's Law? Question mark? It has articles with titles such as Behave with Girls as You Would with Horses, or 35 Pretty Girls That Became Fat and Ugly. Now, are feminists sometimes obnoxious and overly PC? Sure. Does that make it okay to belittle and demean women? Of course not. You're being a dick. Now, these are kind of extreme examples, but we see this in our day-to-day life as well. Like, I had a discussion with a guy recently who didn't understand why some people don't like the Confederate flag. He's like, why are people so overly sensitive? It's just a flag. It doesn't matter. The thing about it is, it doesn't really matter if you don't agree or don't understand why someone else is upset. If you do something that you know pisses people off and you continually do it knowing that it pisses people off, you're probably being an asshole. And you shouldn't be an asshole. Look, everyone has responsibilities. On the one hand, we have the responsibility to be fair and nuanced about how we react to things. We have to think about context and we have to respect everyone's right to free expression. On the other hand, we have the responsibility to treat each other with respect and compassion and not needlessly ruin other people's days. Just because you have the right to do something doesn't mean you ought to do it. That's just me. I want to give a shout out to all of the new subscribers. How you doing? By the way, if you didn't know, I'm on Snapchat, so if you want to snap me some snaps, feel free. I'm the one janitor on Snapchat, the same as my YouTube name. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the thumbs up button and subscribe if you like my hair. But there are many words and phrases that some people think are always bad regardless of the context. And if you notice, I'm refraining from using those particular words in this video because I fear that the mere mention of the word will distract people from the actual point that I'm making, which is part of the problem with political correctness. And you may think that I'm overreacting, but it's actually happened to me a bunch of times. People completely ignore the message that I'm sending or miss the point that I'm making because they were triggered by some particular word or phrase that I used. In my opinion, this is a problem.